As I mentioned earlier, on to one of the world's most rapid vaccine rollouts. Chile has vaccinated nearly 1/5 of its population against COVID-19. That's a higher rate than any country except Israel, the UAE, the United States and the UK. The government acted fast to secure vaccine supplies. Contracts with Pfizer, J&J, AstraZeneca and Sinovac more than covers its needs. By June, Chile wants to have vaccinated 15 million people out of a population of more than 18. And I'm pleased to say joining us now is Sebastián Piñera. He's the president of Chile. Mr. President, fantastic to have you on the show. Congratulations on your vaccine rollout. I think the key here, and I mentioned it, was simply securing supplies very early on, including with your largest trading partner, China.
Good morning, Julia. Thank you very much for your congratulations. Well, that's true. We started negotiating the acquisition of vaccine in April, May, and by now we have secured more than 36 million doses. And that is enough to cover our whole population. Our target is very simple: to vaccinate our risky population, which is basically 5 million people, before the end of this month, and to vaccinate the whole population, the whole objective population, around 15 million people by the end of this semester.
It's a fantastic speed and result. The primary vaccine that you're using at this moment is, as I mentioned, their Sinovac from China. Just a handful of European nations, clearly not the United States, are using this vaccine. How are you managing concerns about efficacy, data, the safety of this vaccine as you give it to your population?
Well, right now we are vaccinating with Pfizer and Sinovac. Sinovac has been approved by very prestigious international health institutions, equivalent to the FDA, and also it has been approved by our own public health institute. And therefore we have made sure that it is safe and efficient. We sent our own people to China to confirm that it was safe and secure, and therefore we're very confident. But we will also use J&J, Sinopharm and AstraZeneca vaccines.
And how confident are you that you can get and meet your targets, assuming the supplies are there? Because it's an incredibly fast rollout. Are you seeing any resistance from people saying they're afraid to take the vaccine? Because it is voluntary and, of course, it is free in your country too.
Well, the process of our vaccination is, first of all, is voluntary and is absolutely free. We have faced very little opposition because we put together a very strong information campaign to convince people that it was necessary, useful, safe and efficient to get vaccinated. But basically, what are the key aspects that have made our case successful? First of all, that we started to negotiate the acquisition of this vaccine very, very early, April, May. And at that time, we were able to sign contracts or reach agreements that can guarantee us that we will have 36 million doses of the vaccines. And second, because our immunization program is a very sound and solid one. Chile has always had a very sound public health system. And therefore, we have the vaccines and we have the capacity to distribute those vaccines all over the country, to every corner of the country. That's why we are vaccinating. Yesterday, we vaccinated more than 300,000 people in one day. And that's why we are really pushing this process, because we want to vaccinate our population as soon as possible.
You are moving far quicker than most other nations around the world, but specifically in Latin America too. Once you have herd immunity, we hope, by the middle of this year in your country, are you going to apply perhaps restrictions on other nations? Is it going to mean restrictions or immunity passports, for example, for your people going elsewhere in case you bring the virus back into the country? How is it going to work? What are you telling citizens?
Well, we are working very hard to get that herd immunization, and we hope that we'll have it by mid-year, before the end of June. We are following very closely the experience of other countries like the UK, the US, Israel. And of course, we want to keep our country safe. That's why we're putting many restrictions in order to avoid new new viruses to get into the country. But, you know, this is something that the whole world is fighting against. And we were extremely and very hardly hit by this pandemic. But I think that we were able to strengthen our health system to avoid the last bed dilemma. And we were able to acquire the vaccines in order to protect our population. Our main concern is to protect the health and the life of our people. And we are working on that every day, 24 hours a day.
But you're open to border restrictions if necessary to protect your people.
We have border restrictions. For instance, nobody can come to Chile without, nobody can come to Chile without a PCR taken in the origin point with at least not more than 72 hours time. And in some cases, when they get here, they have to take another PCR test. Of course, we are protecting our borders because that's something that you have to do. And we are trying to work together with all the Latin American countries to coordinate our effort. For instance, this is something different, but we are very interested and we are promoting a new international treaty because the world is not prepared, and that has been proved with this pandemic, to face this kind of pandemic and the ones that will come in the future. We need a pandemic treaty, and we need to strengthen the World Health Organization. And we are working on that with the European Union. We are working with that because that's something that we needed, and we need it urgently.
We certainly all need to work in a more coordinated fashion if we face this ever again. President Piñera, you were challenged coming into this crisis. I want to move on and talk about recovery. You were challenged coming into this crisis. You were seeing protests in the country over things like inequality, despite the rise in wealth that the nation's seen over a number of decades now. Obviously, every nation, I think, around the world has seen an acceleration in inequality as a result of the economic damage faced. What now? Has it left Chile in a worse position? And how do you address this from here on out?
One minor point, but important point. This pandemic has shown that when the two superpowers, and I'm talking about China and the US, instead of collaborating to face this pandemic, they face each other. It doesn't work. We need more collaboration. We need a better institutions. We need a pandemic treaty. With respect to your question, of course, we faced tough times in late 1918. Despite that, the last 3 decades in our country has been a successful and fruitful story. We were able to increase our GDP per capita by 5 times, to reduce poverty from more than 50% to less than 10%. But people want more, and that's right. That's why we heard the message of the people. And that's why we are working in a new constitution within our legal framework, peacefully and in a participative way. We have strengthened our social protection net, and at the same time, we have put together a very strong package to help people, to bring relief and help to the people that are suffering because of the pandemic and the economic recession. But the Chilean economy and the Chilean society have shown to be very, very sound. I am really proud of the way that the Chilean people have faced both the pandemic and the international economic recession. And that's why I hope that this year we will recover all the losses that we had to face last year. For instance, last year our GDP went down by 6%. We hope that we will recover that 6% this year. And at the same time, we are facing the pandemic, and we have put together a social protection safety net that today is protecting, helping, giving relief to more than 14 million people. 3 out of 4 of every Chilean are being protected and helped by this social net.
President Piñera, I have to wrap up the interview there. Please come back and talk to us when you get to that point of having vaccinated 50 million people by the summer, and we'll talk more about plans for recovery as well. The President of Chile there, Sebastián Piñera. So thank you for joining us on the show today.